This was headed to the dump. This is a fully playable guitar. I'm Danny with Skinner Guitars, and today I'm going to show you every step of how I turn this discarded kitchen countertop into a beautiful custom instrument. So let's get started. So this is the first guitar I've ever made that is entirely of my own design. It's nothing particularly groundbreaking aesthetically, but it's not my take on something else that's already out there. It's a single cutaway offset, and the body is made out of a discarded kitchen countertop. I drew the outline I wanted with pencil on this chunk of it, and that's where we pick up here. So far, it's also the thinnest body I've made, so the finished guitar should be significantly lighter than the chonkers I typically build. There's no template for this one, so I'm just eyeballing it until I'm happy with what I see. Aside from the headstock, the neck is a bit more formulaic. I make these guitars mostly for me, so I don't do a wide variety of different styles of neck. I like a 25.5-inch scale length with a straight headstock, but I can achieve a lot of different looks within those parameters. I have a whole chunk of sapele left over from another build, and I find it makes a great fretboard, and the color matches what I'm going for with this one. I think most of the personal taste choices from a playability standpoint are made on the neck. It's the aspect of the instrument with which the player most directly interfaces. For instance, I like a jumbo fret on a 9.5-inch radius, and probably a hair more relief than what you like. I heard someone say that Jack White likes to fight the guitar a little bit while he's playing it, and I can relate to that sentiment. Probably because I grew up playing inexpensive, poorly set up guitars. The hands develop a preference over 40+ years. The headstock is an element of the neck that I use to create some variety of flavor. I won't ever have a particular headstock shape that's associated with my brand. I feel like that would really limit me creatively, and as a consequence, diminish the fun I have when doing this. And I won't let that happen. I mean, the fun is the whole reason I do any of this. Well, that, and it kind of feels like therapy. It's impossible to simultaneously build a custom guitar and worry about anything besides maybe losing a finger due to worrying about something other than building a guitar while building a guitar. In fact, to me personally, guitars would feel a little less important if I had less fingers. So it makes sense if you don't think about it. I love my oscillating belt sander for thicknessing my headstocks. It naturally creates the perfect radius on the truss rod end. I've seen Ted Woodford use a fence on his spindle sander for doing a similar operation on acoustic bridge ends, and I always think I want to set something like that up for this job, but it's always an afterthought. As soon as I have my neck in a state where I can fit it, I create the neck pocket on my body. This allows me to use the neck to roughly locate where the other components will go relative to it for alignment. Here I'm dividing the neck into even sectors longitudinally and giving myself lines to work to when shaping the neck with my Shinto rasp. This technique is commonly referred to as faceting. In practice, I don't really do it myself anymore. I just wanted to demonstrate generally how it's done. It's how I learned to shape necks, and it's super helpful in understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish when shaping the neck. And once you do it enough, it just becomes second nature. Aside from the lengthwise lines, I've drawn the intersection of the body so I know where that is and where the nut happens on the other end. Those are the reference points where you stop shaping the neck proper and begin blending it into the headstock, and where the neck needs to be rectangular in cross-section to seat properly in the pocket. The Shinto rasp is the perfect tool for shaping the neck. On one side it has coarse teeth for really hogging off material, and the other side has finer teeth for less aggressive removal and refinement. I think I got mine on Amazon for like less than 50 bucks, and from what I can tell there's nothing special about it. I'm pretty sure they're all the same. Once I'm happy with my basic shape, I use the 80 grit sandpaper to remove the tooth marks left behind by the rasp and work my way up through the grits to the 240-320 range. And hey, as long as we're just sanding, if you like watching me do this type of stuff, it'd be amazing if you'd like, subscribe, comment, and share. It's free for you and it really helps me a lot. Thanks in advance. It's really just so much sanding. As I rounded over the edges on this body, it occurred to me that I wanted to do something a little different with this guitar. I know that this finger-jointed acacia is stunningly beautiful with a regular oil finish, but I've done that on this channel already. So I'm going to try and make this one pop a bit. So I chose a very potent amberwood stain to create an eye-popping contrast between the dark and the light grains of the material. I'm doing the finishing now because the wood's a lot softer than other acacias I've worked with, and I know a couple coats of poly will make it a lot more durable to survive the rest of the build. But then I got the idea to stain the fretboard too, and I wanted that effect on my oak dowel fret markers as well. So my order of operations got a little out of whack for a bit. Everything is going to start making sense again soon, I promise. For now, I set about drilling holes, dropping a little glue, jamming oak dowels in, and sawing them off flush, per our usual arrangement. I sand in my 9.5-inch radius and cut my fret slots back down to depth because I don't like doing math. And then I apply several coats of wipe-on poly with 4 to 6 hours in between and a light sanding. These melamine sponges for applying finish are a game changer. They hold a lot of finish and it doesn't get everywhere. At this point I install the tuner so I have something to anchor my dental floss I use to aid in the final location of the bridge and pickups. I apply painter's tape to the areas I need to mark up since the finish is already done, and I attach the neck. I install a temporary nut to ensure the E-strings line up properly with the outer edges of the neck, and measure to locate the final placement of the bridge. I use green dental floss for this due to the higher contrast against the background of the neck. It's much easier to see than strings. I don't feel bad about throwing it out when I'm done either, because it's also much less expensive than strings. And as you probably learned from my other videos, I'm very cheap. I use drill guides to install my through-body string ferrules. There's a whole process involved for making sure they end up in a neat straight line. I'm not going to get into that here, but I may make a separate video detailing that. I cut out the blue tape where I've determined my pickup route should go. I may always do it like this from now on because I love the high visibility of the contrast. As usual, I hog out the bulk of the waste with a Forstner bit to make light work for my palm router. The less work the router has to do, the safer this job is. Rather than setting up a template, I use another Forstner bit and some chisels to make my control cavity. I pulled it off quite cleanly. I mean, if you ask me. Who else are you gonna ask? They probably don't know. I drilled my holes to connect all my cavities for wiring. I put a slightly tighter than 9.5-inch radius on my fret wire. This helps the fret seat better. After tapping the fret in on both ends, tapping down the middle forces the ends outwards, allowing the barbs on the tang to grab a bit better. A little CA glue in the fret slot, a little tap on the fret, and then I use my arbor press I got at Harbor Freight and convert it into a fret press with my limited skills in machining. And all that happens like 21 more times. With this fret end block, I render the razor sharp fret ends harmless and docile, so I won't draw back a bloody nub. I make the fret ends pretty, then I grind down these brand new frets like a psychopath. I restore the crown of the fret, then I do the fret wire equivalent of sanding. 6 long months of polishing. It was at least a half an hour. I'm always going to shield my cavities, even if you don't like it. Especially if you don't like it. It's just how I am. Here we find ourselves in the passionate throes of final assembly, basking in the warm glow of this overexposed light I was using to see my work as I soldered. I swear it wasn't like that in the viewfinder. I'm a guitar builder, not a cameraman, Jim. I truly hope there's a guy named Jim watching this, and he thinks I'm speaking directly to him, and the contact is cathartic and changes Jim's life for the better. Finally, I apply my Headstock logo in the manner it's been done by all the greatest builders for time immemorial, the illustrious water slide decal. I know what you're wondering, and yes, it's okay to be amazed. I hope you've had as much fun watching this as I've had making it. Thanks for watching.